Welcome to Master in Urban and Regional Planning, Bandung Institute of Technology. Master of Urban and Regional Planning at ITB is designed to become the center for theory and practice of urban and regional planning and policy development in Indonesia. Graduates of these programs are expected to become the leaders, the planners, and the researchers that are ready for the needs and challenges of the recent and future times. Students can choose to join the regular program or the international program. If you choose to join the regular program, you will receive courses in Bahasa. You also can choose these six specialized programs, including regional development, urban planning, infrastructure and transportation systems, urban management, disaster planning and management, and innovation systems and smart cities. If you are interested to join the international program, you will receive courses in English. In the second year, you can choose to continue your studies at partner universities abroad through a double degree program or continue your studies at ITB. We have collaborated with a number of world-class universities in various countries, such as in the Netherlands, Japan, and the United States. To support the learning activities, we provide comfortable classrooms, library, multi-purpose halls, conference room, studios, and computer laboratory. Learning activities are carried out interactively through discussions, project works, and presentations. Learning activities are also supported by a number of events organized by the faculty, such as the International Joint Studio, international summer camps, student exchange, guest lectures, international conferences, workshops, and field trips. So come and join us. Let's plan the brighter future.
All right, let's start. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our event International Joint Studio 2021. Today is the 8th day of our program. Next, please. Okay, before we start, let me inform you about today's rundown. In the first session, there will be a lecture from Professor Delik Udala. And then the next session, there will be another lecture delivered by Dr. Sylvia Covarino. Both lecture will be moderated by Dr. Paul Jones. After that, it will be followed by a question and answer session. Then in the last session, there will be a concluding remarks from Dr. Paul Jones. Next, please. Now I will explain some rules in this webinar. The rules are same as before. The first one, participants expected to use the Zoom account based on their real name. The second one, participants are expected to maintain the order during the lecture. The third one is about Q&A procedure. Participants can ask questions both on YouTube and also on Zoom. Special for Zoom platform, please use Q&A feature. And if you have similar question, please upvote by clicking the thumbs up icon below the question. Remember, Q&A feature is only used for substantive question related to the webinar theme. The last one is the committee has the right to exclude participants who do not follow the rules. Next, please. All right, today's lecture will be moderating by Dr. Paul Jones. There are two topics. The first one is about regional urbanization in Indonesia, delivered by Professor Delik Udala. And the second one is the topic about the informal urban living in the megacity of Cairo, delivered by Dr. Sylvia Covarino. Next, please. Before the lecture, let me introduce you to our moderator today, Dr. Paul Jones. He is an associate professor in University of Sydney and part of urban and regional planning and policy program. He is an urban development and management practitioner with 30 years experience in Australia and overseas. He also has a lot of agency experience, conducted numerous projects with UN Habitat, ADB, OS8, UNDP, UNESCO, and much more. Dr. Paul is also appointed as member of editorial board of Springer Urban Book Series. And as we know, he is one of initiator of this joint studio. All right, without further ado, I would like to invite our moderator for today. Everyone, please welcome Dr. Paul Jones.
Thank you, Sahida. Thank you for the introductory words. And again, welcome to all the students. This is day 8 of the studio. So well done to the students still hanging in there, and not too long to go till the wrap up later on in the week. So just a reminder that we've got 2 great lectures tonight, and just a reminder that you make your questions in the Q&A function, and we'll deal with the questions at the end of the second lecture by Sylvia. So make your questions for Dilek and then also for Sylvia, and we'll deal with them all together at the one time at the end of the 2 lectures. But the first lecture tonight is by Dilek Hadallah, and I'll just read out Dilek's bio. I'll just get that up on the screen. And I think firstly we should just make a congratulations here to Dilek Hadallah, because Dilek's actually just been in the last couple of weeks made a professor. So congratulations to Dilek on that really great achievement. So Dilek is head of the postgraduate program of Urban and Regional Studies in the School of Planning, Policy Development and Architecture at ITV. He's, as I said, he's recently appointed as a professor. He's editor-in-chief of the increasingly esteemed Journal of Regional and City Planning, which is based out of the School of Architecture, Planning and Policy Development at ITB, and is getting lots of recognition, including Scopus. And he's also on the editorial board. He's a member of the Singapore Journal of Tropical Geography. Dilek has long experience teaching courses in the bachelor, master and doctoral programs in urban and regional planning. And his main research focuses on the transformation of urban frontiers. And he's very much into metropolises, joining of metropoles, rural urban regions in the context of Asian countries, this transition and transformation with globalization, decentralization, and impacts and drivers from democracies. And on that note, I'd like to welcome Professor Dilek Hadallah to give his keynote speech and lecture tonight. Thank you, Dilek.
Thank you, all committee and some panelists here as well, Haryo and others, and all the students and participants. May I share my presentation? Okay. One moment. Yeah. Okay. I think the setting has to be changed. Should be fine now, I guess. Yes. So the topic for my presentation is about regional urbanization in Indonesia, with a particular emphasis on the transformations from metropolitan scale urbanization towards more at the regional urbanization scale. And maybe this, I hope this can give a kind of a larger context in which the joint studio are working on, because even you think of some urban transformation at the neighborhood levels, clearly there might be some wider the relations or networks with the outer parts of the urban dynamics, not just at the city region, even at the global level. So I think this can be a relevant part of the whole lectures. So my presentation will have some focus on 4 topics. First, what emerging context that we are now facing when we are talking about urbanization, especially in Indonesian situation. And what past and recent trends of urbanization that are taking place in Indonesia, particularly. And then I will try to be more focused on what we expect a kind of emerging reality of urbanization at a larger scale beyond metropolitan areas, and some closing with conclusion and implication. So first, there are a number of change contexts in which the way the city, the urban, changing their behaviors. First is the global environmental change, where the urban metabolism are scaling toward a much larger area, because as we are getting more modern and also the economy is more complex, then our metabolic scale are becoming larger. And because of some interconnection in the global environment, that the water, the food, the energy issues, security, resilience of many countries or large regions are increasingly also related or determined by that of the urban. And then we are also witnessing some technological revolution, especially with respect to the transport and information system. From a geographical viewpoint, at least we are viewing that the meaning of distance are changing from talking about how far kilometers towards more complex variables like how long or how expensive, how difficult to reach certain place. And then also the changing essence of space, because in the past we tend to see the space, the geographical unit as a space of place where activities are located. But now we are increasing in the more intense reality of space of flow, where it's not just a matter of location, but how things are flowing from one to another place. And then globalization and the renewing world order, looking at how the economic structure are becoming more complex. Also, the organizational system of how the economies are running is also becoming more complex. And these requires more a larger interrelation of the economic system, and where also different places are competing with each other. And in the past, we are talking about inter-country competition, and now it is becoming more evident that inter-city, inter-regional competition is becoming another reality. And the network through which the economy, the people reflects upon is not just the internet networks, but also the external. And even we can see that some urban networks are becoming worldwide networks of the of their economies. And then decentralization in the broader sense, that some issues are becoming detached from the centers. There need to be a definition of interaction between between location. In the past, we think about core periphery, but now it's becoming more interplaced relations, and the urban structures becoming regionalized. Also, the role of the state and non-state actors, including the market, the private, has been repositioning between the state, and then Indonesia also has experienced radical change from that was very state-centered and then very much market, and now some evidence of being we are also going back into the statism of the urban development. Still trying to put it in the larger context that talking about the urban dynamics also has to be put in interchange reality between the urban and the rural, and that also has some distinctive features. First, talking about urban transformation, we can think of a very technical issues or planning issues, but also it can be a very soft or developmental or institutional issues. Also, I'm going to put more emphasis as well that urbanization can happen at the micro scale, meso toward the macro scale. And then within this quadrant, many issues are emerging, and probably we are not going to talk all of this. I'm quite pretty sure that my colleague Sylvia probably will have some more discussion on the social development, on informality, inclusiveness, and so forth. While I'm trying to complement the whole discussion of the whole lectures by giving more emphasis on the regional scale and more planning issues, how metropolitans are emerging, rise and fall of metropolitans, also some relation with surrounding rural, urban, small town, and then here again the topic of mega region. First, we in many respects, in many cases, can be aware that actually urban transformation doesn't always happen at a single scale, but it's a multi-scale process of transformation. Well, maybe traditionally, or at least in the past, we're seeing the urban transformation is a city-scale phenomenon from a neoclassical viewpoint, looking at city, for instance, as a agglomeration of urban activities or non-agricultural activities. But then with an increasing complexity of the factors we were introduced in the previous slides, metropolitan area emerged as a system of urban unit that consisting of large city with its commuting hinterland areas, or in some cases, or in some countries or context, we are more sometimes focusing on the functional relation between the urban core and the suburban space. And then also in Indonesia or in Asia, there has been quite strong discussion on the larger phenomena of mega urban region, at least during the 90s toward the beginning of 2000, where the metropolitan area is no longer even sufficient to manifest the real transformation of our urban areas, because there are some supporting areas, including peri-urban and rural urban areas, or what Maggie mentioned the term of desa kota, or maybe some kind like rural urban transition, which is very much a unique features of Asian urbanization during the time. And I think until now, it still has many relevance. But then we will zoom into a more recent phenomenon of mega region, where that mega urban region in itself, in some perspective, still cannot really much sufficient to really detect the more recent phenomenon of urban transformation, especially outside the metropolitan areas, as some new forms of cities in between cities. I think in Germany, sometimes they call it Zwischenstadt, cities in between, or in some US context, it can ex-urban realms, where new urban form are really very much in no man's land, in somewhere in nowhere. Urban transformation in surrounding, which is nowhere, when we compare to the other urbanized location, it's very far away. First, maybe trying to be, I think it seems like I have spent, I think, 15 minutes, right, already. So I have to rather quick. For metropolitanization, we're talking about the city surrounded by the suburb, where the issue of satellite town, large-scale residential estate were quite evident, and some commuting issues, basic services. In terms of planning, some basic services issues or interlocal government was very much feasible. while in the mega urbanization, there has been a kind of unplanned or mixture of agriculture and non-agricultural functions in some densely populated villages. So it's like dealing with the mixture of agriculture and non-agricultural function, and then some sprawling of industrial space, intercity railways, and some quite hot planning issue were dealing with land use conversion in the fringe, and some issue of local economic decline or developmental issues. And then coming into the mega regional issues, talking about mega regional transformation, it's quite eclectic or complex processes. Maybe it's kind of like chicken and egg, how mega regional as a space are becoming. But clearly there has to be some kind of a global force and domestic forces. For instance, some North American perspective more focused on how the metropolitan networks are linked with each other through some infrastructure interaction. So a more of morphological dimension. And some cases in Europe focusing on the relational dimension of the intercity relations. And in some Asian contexts, and also in some, to many extent, also the recent trends in Indonesia transformation is how actually such a transformation can be triggered or hand in hand with the policy intervention. At least there are some intentional features of this complex special unit are in the making. I'm focusing on Java case where the most established urban space are can be found in Indonesia. The North Coast is in some studies in the past, it's considered to be the longest city in the world. So even before we are thinking about recent global competition and so forth, that the North Coast, Java or Pantura in Indonesia is one of the longest city in the world, and a very long urbanized area from some viewpoint. It is more than 1,000-kilometer corridors connecting some mega urban regions between Jakarta, Bandung, and Surabaya. And we are also seeing that this, while the physical transformation can be tracked back through the colonial era, where during the competition between colonial imperialism between the British, the Dutch, and others, that regional infrastructure was considered to be a global security reason for defense. But now it's re-emerged that the transformation of this corridor also something has to do with some economic issue, including the competitiveness of the whole region. And what the planning policy says about it, and that's one of our focuses. Actually, we are also seeing that while some phenomena are quite an emergent features, there are some interventional factors behind it. And what is interesting in Indonesian context is if we compare to a rather more strong state capitalist country like China, or maybe in some West Asian countries or Middle East, that in practice we have not that such a strong statutory planning, or let's say spatial or land use planning is evidently to be not that strong in the formation of the urban space at the larger scale. in Indonesia. This is quite interesting if we compare to those in China, for instance. And a more moderate role of sectoral plans like industrial policies or tourism policies have their effect. And what is more interesting, actually, the non-statutory planning, or those policies that are not very much designed by constitutionally or in a basic law, which is it's more politically driven planning, or like not very much structured in the laws, are quite important in triggering or affecting the transformation in Indonesian context. For instance, during the previous presidents, they have the concept of economic corridor through MP3EI, and then the current president Jokowi, while he is not acknowledging the previous president's plan, but actually factually he has taken a lot of message from the previous presidential plan, although he rebranded that plan into a national strategic plan. And this regional plan, especially with high evidence from the non-statutory plan, are providing the backbone for some physical change in the corridor. This would include, for instance, the Trans Java Expressway. This is like 1,000 kilometers toll road connecting the largest cities in Java. And then now we are also constructing the first high-speed train throughout the corridor, although it is the first phase is like connecting neighboring metropolitans Jakarta and Bandung, but from the ideas or discourse or policy discussion perspective, it can be, or it will be spanned throughout the whole north coast until Surabaya. Also, some new transport hub are constructed in beyond the peripheral areas of the large cities in new location, in empty space in some respect. And that's how, and that is the new beginning of what we would see a transformation of the urbanized island of Java, where all metropolitans or mega urban regions will be connected with each other, or it is being connected. And the construction of some transport hub in new city outside the traditional boundaries of mega urban regions also one of the emerging evidence that can be differentiated from the previous one, and some more specialized zone also being constructed, and more freight issue rather than people mobility in some ways. Yeah, this is just, maybe this is just a beginning or a preliminary studies to see a new emerging phenomenon in Indonesia, in particular attention to Java. And now we can draw some conclusion that there is an undoubted need to combine the spatial or physical environmental planning system with the sectoral or socioeconomic planning system. And it has been a lengthy race, I think, in some ways between these different policy fields. And there were some periods that several policy systems are on the rise, and then later is the other ones. And now in the period that physical planning are being questioned in respect for their effectiveness in reshaping the urban function. But what is more important is the integration between these different policy systems. And we are also seeing that interlocal government, interlocal actors collaboration are not suffice to really dealing with the more complex and wider transformation of the urban. And the central government are gaining their importance. And some coordinating ministry, for instance, clearly has, I think it has some relation with the previous discussion with Bish, where I think he put quite interesting emphasis that there are some spots of planning issues that clearly the state, the government is the only actors that has the legitimacy to deal with it. And it's quite evident. Coordination issue among different ministries and policy fields. Also, integration with among different policy fields. Like for instance, land use planning has been associated with very much policy-oriented, policy-oriented intervention. Sometimes it's considered to be hindering the economic development, and the other way around. The economic policy seems to don't put very much emphasis on the sustainability, for instance. Some other issue can be related also to the previous course, such as those with Johan Walcher, that value capturing is also an interesting mechanism to deal with the complexity of transformation of the urbans at the larger scale. And environmental consequences are points that require more investigation, but clearly the issue of ecological connectivity and in particular Indonesia, it's island-based urbanization, that ecological issue can be a very important one. Also, a regional cohesion, because disparity has long become one of the development issue in Indonesia, including in the same island like Java, the north and the south, and the emergence of this larger urban scale can reinforce and magnify the disparity between the north and the south if we don't put more cohesion between the different spot or the different regions. I think that's going to be the end of my presentation, and I will give back to Paul for the next session. Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Dilek. Thank you, Dilek. That was great. I think it, for a lot of those students who haven't been to Indonesia, Dilek's talk really put the contextual side clearly out there for you. And I think what was good about Dilek's talk is he's stressing a different sort of scale than perhaps some of the other lectures have been focusing on in the last week. I mean, Dilek made some very, very important points about the impact of globalization. He talked about urban making and driving national changes, the importance of moving just from looking at metro to bigger regional changes, and then obviously moving into this multi-scalar mega region perspective. And I think the example he gave of the Java mega region, this massive conurbation from Jakarta on one side to Surabaya on the other, is a really interesting example, as Dilek said, unfolding. And again, trying to look at the different drivers, the role of government and different stakeholders. And as Dilek said, for much of this, you know, it is really only government can do this sort of change at this sort of scale. So I think there's a lot of really good, important takeaway points there. So we're going to move on now to Sylvia. So I'll ask Sahira to put up Sylvia's bio, which is great. It's just up there now. So we're fortunate tonight to have Sylvia Coravino, who's based in Cairo in Egypt, so that's great. Sylvia is an associate professor at the German University in Cairo. She collaborates with a whole range of different stakeholders including industrial design, technology, and environmental culture at Sabizia University in Rome. Silvia's held numerous research and teaching positions within the key areas of urban contemporary socio-anthropological living. So she crosses a really interesting space between architecture and sort of socio-cultural, anthropological. Extensive experience as a professional and collaborated with many professionals from various fields, from planners, architects, and designers. Silvia's got excellent experience in terms of publications and editorial, being involved with a range of academic journals and committee member for conferences and core paper. And she's a research fellow for research at DAD University of Sassari. So welcome to Silvia. Silvia's also got a couple of students that she's going to involve in her talk. And so we very much look forward to this talk, which is on the informal urban living in the megacity of Cairo. So over to you, Silvia.
Good morning to everyone. Good morning from Cairo. Good afternoon for you in Jakarta. Shall I share my screen, please? Okay. Is working? Is working the screen?
Yes.
Yeah, it's okay. Up there. Yep, it's fine.
Yes, okay. I would like to introduce the topic of my lecture. Will be then about Cairo, the informal urban living in the megacity of Cairo. This is a reflection over a particular context, but the presentation will move between the global and the local scale, and it's part of result of a course, a couple of courses from the spring semester 2020. And we started in campus and then we move in online modality. And the course is Studio 4 in the sixth semester in the bachelor program, was integrated with the program of housing, and was coordinated by me with the support of my teaching assistant. They will be here in the presentation at the end to show part of the final work. Ahmed Al-Zayin, teaching assistant in the German University in Cairo in the program of urban design, and is completed the bachelor in Cairo University and later the master in the landscape architecture, and now is a PhD candidate. Is going to finish his parts in the topics of the urban design and design for kids. At the same time, Mohamed Sharkawi, part of my team, teaching assistant at department and the urban design program in German University, completed bachelor degree in the JUC, and is working in the master topics regarding the planning and the urban impact. Well, let's go through my presentation, and I will start now by the very general overview, the topics regarding the informal global city, and it's part, as I mentioned, of the design studio and housing, and touching Cairo and the global south. Let's go through, let's say, an image of when we are talking about the informality, more or less, how is the issue of the density and the impact of this informal development of the city. When we are talking about informal city, officially our area where the group of housing units have been constructed on land that occupants have no legal claim to or occupy legally. It's a very complex dynamic behind, okay? And including many different aspects, social, environmental, and economical too. And that take a different name. We are talking about slum, shanty town, squatter, informal, spontaneous settlement, you know? And it's a reality touching different contexts. And sorry, I try to, touching a different urban context in the global scale. This is simply a schema and a diagram representative, you know, how we are figure out with a very simple representation of how is the city informal and the formal city in our memory. When we are talking about the urban informality, as I've mentioned before, we are touching different aspects, okay? The issue regarding us as a designer, educator, planner, and is a professional issue, is a part of the plan of the city. At the same time, is a definition of the mind from the people, is the future condition of the community there, and the councils, from where is coming out this issue, because usually we are touching this topic and with the problem, let's say at the fact, but maybe we have to go through the process, how come out this kind of reality, the image of this city and the urban impact, the contrast between the formal and informal city, let's say, especially in the physical aspect and in terms of urban morphology and the build form, and the several examples, no, and more or less we are in the same reality. This is a very short video. It gives us an overview on such number about this informal global scale.
We don't find toilets inside the informal settlements, so they have to use open fields or bushes, and that's where they get criminal attacks.
U-Asenat wayena 6 years old wavuma waphuma ngegate waya elantu kwezitoilet zangafumaneki.
ये गटर का पानी बिल्कुल रोड पे लोग चल नहीं सक रहे, तब हमने ये काम अपने बजट आप इस गटर को तैयार कर रहे हैं, 5-5 हजार रुपया
लगी नहीं गली में, बहुत सहूलत हुआ।
The urban poor in our cities are the engines of the economies.
हम अपने रोजी रोटी के लिए जब बम्बई आए 35 साल से हम लोग इसके पास काम कर रहे हैं। इससे पहले हमारे डैडी इसमें जो गांव से बच्चे आते हैं 4-5 पढ़े हुए, उनको हम लोग कुछ सिखाते।
Security-wise, we provide the skills. For 90% of these skills, this is the need, what they need for me. That we got this school as part of their home, even shelter.
Babeera bogamba nti nabo balina ekyapa nti kyekimu kati ngaffe abantu ababeera mu siramu bandibadde batukonsiganya ng'omuntu wabeera ng'oli evicted.
Que mucha gente vive con lámina y hace mucho calor y viven en condiciones deplorables y estamos poniendo losas, ayudando a la gente para que viva en condiciones más buenas condiciones de las que tiene.
Nunca soñé que fuéramos a tener esto.
This was the video we used at the beginning, because I forgot to tell you something. The studio and the program to integrate the studio with the housing come from a teaching group. We are working a 4 subject, okay? We are working a studio in urban scale integrate with housing in 4 topics. In Cairo, One professor will work in a historical area, another one in a new desert city, another one in the middle of the desert. And my topic was through the decision to cover the general overview of the urban frame of Cairo in informality. And this is why I decided to work a lot also with the connection of global and local scale to give the student an overview out of the micro reality where we are working. The pattern, and this is the video we used at the beginning to open the focus group with the student and to coordinate the program of the two integrated course, because housing was a research behind the design proposal in the studio. The pattern of the density, let's continue to the global introduction, and this is how we figure out in terms of the composition and the organization of the settlement and the urban form behind how the people are living there and how is the high concentration of the people. It's not only through the, let's say, the form and the built form, but it's also the relationship with the natural environment, or with the topography, with the natural element of the city. And particularly, we are going to touch this aspect in the site where we are working, because especially on the residual area, let's say under the infrastructure, behind the river, and on the very risky area, it's another important aspect to consider. We are facing with this kind of development in the urban age where we are. This is a comparison of different pattern and different texture, and more or less are very similar, and the density is the main issue. When you're talking about density, I try to work also with the student to give an overview, how is the density in a different level. This is the density in the European city, and this is what's going on in Asia. Probably most of you know very well, because it's your reality and your context, and also Jakarta is there. And how is interesting to have a look how is increasing, how is going crazy in the last century. Also, again, this is a summary and a comparison between the different countries, and how taking place India and China are the two very important reality in the topics of the urbanization. Behind of this, let's say, urban analysis and a physical understanding and the form, there is a border community. There are people are living there, and there's invisible urban living as the topics, because by the simple definition of the slum, refer to an informal settlement in a urban area that is very densely populated. And this is the classical portrait of the living condition, then the problem in the habitat and the low condition, the problem in the infrastructure more especially the basic service for the community, and the social right to people to live in a very good condition. This is a quote, is a motto, let's say, if you've seen one city slum, you've seen them all. But it's not true, by the way, because each reality has a different connection with the particular context where it sits, and also the community is unique always. We start to work with the student with an approach by the keyword and by the visual perception. Through the keyword of a service, hygienic condition, and transportation, we open to them the global scale, and we ask to them to submit a certain number of photos to work by image. And they come out with a very good reflection over. And of course, they were considering Cairo at the same time, the Africa and scale, and at the same time, the global scale. And we put together all the work, and we try to come out with three directions: the environmental reflection over, and the social and economical. This is has been our important direction for the two experience. And of course, some literature behind and the reference, try to understand how is working on and how is the global frame of the topics. This is another very short video to figure out the input of the research and the work together on the vision of the future. Through this focus, no, what is behind, and yesterday I really appreciate the presentation of my colleagues, Dr. Paolo Silva, when he was talking, no, and considering the informal city as a part of the city, and I was pushing my students to think like this and to consider not something separate, not something different, not something to, but consider as a part of the entire mosaic. Well, we are through this very general reflection, we must consider we are living in an urban age and an urbanized planet, and this is why the local is connected to the global, and this is the portrait of our general high density and the high concentration of people. And of course, Cairo is one of the important nodes of this network, and the impact of this urbanization, if you're thinking also in terms of how is aggressive, we are in Anthropocene time also, how is aggressive this urban growth and the relationship with the environment, where we are facing too the issue of the megacity and the large dimension like Cairo is it, and the forecast and the view for the coming year, because our student as educator, we have a responsibility, let's say, to address them in the new reality where they're going to work, because we are coming from a certain reality, from a certain urban scale, but they will face with a very large dimension and population growing, etc. This is touching the topics of the population growing, because the urbanization is related also to the population. It's not only the immigration from the rural area to the urban area, but it's considering also the increasing of the population. And the region where we are, this is a very large number. If you are consider the particular frame of Egypt, it's a very impressive. We are going to 300% more just in half century, and it's a very high. Also, have a look at the spatial environmental context of Egypt, where 94% of the territory is a desert. And this large increasing of the urbanization, it's a very aggressive also in the environment. Such data regarding the comparison rural and urban in the context of Egypt, the urban-rural population, and the overview on the next half century, let's say. The urban planet, let's say, in Egypt, and consider, of course, one city, Cairo, is the mega city, and take more than 20 million of people. This is the diagram representative of the summary of the 6 large cities and the development in the 15 years, let's say, in the time where we are exactly in the middle, and the increasing of Cairo, very impressive and very large. The urbanization in Egypt, let's consider, there are different data. Let's consider between 60% and 70% are people are living in the informal area, informal settlement. And this 10%, uncertain 10%, is considered 1 million people, and it's a very important. The Cairo urban growth, the Great Cairo, and the cities inside of the Great Cairo, the developed Cairo from the last millennium, let's say how it's growing. Of course, the very important things of the Nile and the Mokattam Hills as an important element of the environment as an icon. And our site and the area where we're working with our students, it's exactly in between and very close and very related with this topography. Through the time, recently, the build-up of Cairo, some overlapping, 1950, and on the gray layer behind is the current situation, the impressive, aggressive, increasing of the gray area in the last 40 years, and the vision. The presentation from my colleague before, Professor Delik Udala, sorry for my pronunciation, I was really impressed through this study of this connection and talking about the very large and the regional planning, because basically here in Cairo, we are facing on the new capital. We had the new Cairo and the issue of the desert city, and now we are going to the new capital, and it's a very similar thinking and vision for the future. The informal settlement in Cairo, how is not this proportion between the formal and informal city, and the condition of the building structure, the illusion, the urban hygienic condition of the community. Also here, for example, we are talking, as I mentioned through this study, around 70% of the inhabitants of the Great Cairo are in informal settlement. As I mentioned before, also the uncertain data, it's an issue to contain and to manage. To figure out how is the portrait of this area, and more or less we have three important, let's say, content: the former and the desert land, as the new developed the city, the historic core of the city, where there are several settlements there in historical Cairo, and the urban pocket, what is running around to the development of such program in housing. A very good reference, this study from GITZ in 2009 come out, and it's a very good background to understand the development, increase of this dynamic, certain data through the map, through the experience, especially to consider. And this is the core of Cairo. And let's see, this is a purple area in the legend regarding the own private agricultural land is the development of this how is the dynamic and the connection between the core of the city and the explosion out of the city. Some data regarding the issue of the housing, how it's running, how is the scenario in Egypt about the constructing of the housing unit by the sector. This is the data regarding, let's say, take place in the 10 year. And there is an overall annual around 1 million of units. This is a comparison between the informal private, the formal private, and the public one. Have a look how is the impact of the informal private, very, very high, and how is running the, let's say, the combination between the formal private and the public one. And the study considered the last 20 years in the context. Again, in another form of the comparison, how it's impacting the scenario. The special and the pattern of this reality and the urban morphology in Cairo, the issue of the infrastructure on this area, and the terminology and the language of the informality here, how is this is a very interesting article come out with a very good schema of the representation, how the informality is working out, the dynamic behind the typology of the informality we are considering, from the category, from the topology to the example of that. The reality on the chain of the city, the public space, I mean the informality in terms of the microeconomy too. This is a picture from the city of that, and a very interesting context behind the border of our site. And the temporary and mobile informality in the street life. This is a brief summary also of the garbage city, Manchet Nasser, the area and the surrounding where we work with our students. We are located behind the Mokatan Hill on the border, let's say, of the historic Cairo, and very close this important slum of the cemetery, a very large area. And the dynamic more or less is the same, it was let's say attract the people from the large movement of the immigration from the rural area to the urban area. And this is related also particularly the area to the let's say to the issue of recycling, and the microeconomy is there because it's related with this particular connection with the Zabalin collector of the garbage. This is why the garbage city. This is an overview half century ago of the area, the hill, and then the first development, the initial built area there, the aqueduct, okay, and then amazing landmark of the Mamluk architecture in Cairo in the area behind. And this is, let's say now, an overview, the citadel. This is the city of death with then a very nice element of the Mamluk architecture, the autostrad, the first developed the hill, and this is the area behind there. Manchet Nasser is a shanty town in a very precarious condition, and is one of the interesting cases in the Middle East, and then, let's say also in Africa and the city of Cairo. Its called area was first provided with the basic amenities such as sewage and water system. There are an interesting process also in relationship with the government to try to apply such plan for the housing, and starting from early 1970. This is an impact of the self-construction, the topics of the, let's say, the self-construction city, and how the people try to realize a certain typology of housing and the impact and the material they are using. They're using brick, and then they try to support more because it's a very high density and a massive construction with the application of the concrete techniques. The phase of the people are living and are working there. It's a very interesting dynamic, and this is why the Zavalin and the collector, some intervention also for the public space there. The surrounding area, the location of the Mashhad city, how is the impact of the density, is also the relationship with the infrastructure, as in a very important topics for the area. This is the context. Okay, this is the city of Dad, this is the Mashhad Nasser, and this is the area where we are working, very close. This is a certain data of the area, but of course increasing is not really easy to calculate from different study, but we are talking about 35-40,000 inhabitants for this specific area. This is a map of the risk of the area. Also another important is the red line is the very high risk of this relationship with the, because it's, let's say, it's an aggressive construction behind the hill. And unfortunately in 2008 happened a very huge disaster. There are many people died. I mean, there is also this combination of the risk as a very important. This is the historic development of the area through the time and how is the urban grow. And this is a kind of plan and intervention from the government, is also part of the plan, the 2050, but is not realized yet. More data, more reference about the area, how we are going to read and to understand how is known as the combination and the border, the topic of the infrastructure, the topic of the story Cairo, the topics of the risk and the marginal border with the topography, more and more close, the urban texture behind, how is working the different area, the impact of the autostrada, and the aggressive infrastructure there. Let's say the special relationship with the hills, because there is an important consider, let's say, heritage. This a church in this cave is a quite a unique element, interesting element in Cairo. And how is this relationship with the natural element too? Such services are there in the area. I try to translate for you from the Arabic, the church, the housing, the environmental institution, the Sunday market, the entrance. It is let's say, it's a very well connected with the autostrada and with the surrounding area. The impact with the topography, the reality of the informality in the Sunday market, the condition of the, let's say, the built environment there, the reality inside the little void on the national city. And this is an extract from the church, this underground architecture. And this is, oh, sorry, what's going on? Okay, sorry, everything is all right. And this is how such self-construction from the community there, it's really close and behind. And this is why the risk, and this is two very important accidents in 1970 and 2008. The origin of the Zabalin, or the community there, they're coming from these two very important areas, just to map the issue of the migration from the rural to the urban area. This is happened after during the British occupation, by the way, and close to the Second World War, and then 1960, 1970 was increasing, but started, let's say, in 1940 during the World War. Then the issue, such part of the ethnic group coming, part of the community were farmers, and they coming with the animal. They were specialized to to have pigs there, and then there was working and survive because the macroeconomy there was to provide the pigs to the touristic restaurant in Cairo. And this is a mapping, let's say a schema and diagram, how is working this dynamic of the recycling. Because not the Zabali, let's say garbage collectors in English, and Zabali is the Arabic terms, and how is the circuit? I mean, how they at the same time, they are self-sufficient and they're providing also to manage the 90% of the solid garbage in Cairo. I mean, it's such a really important dynamic behind the way they are working and living in the same area. And now as working the housing typologies was a very interesting also for our students to think how in the same physical space they are living and they're working. How is the dynamic of the building? How is the dynamic in the street? And by the time, this is a very interesting study we found ready, by the way, it was very useful for us and also for the student to think about the proposal. How is working this relationship with this street space and inside the building and the circuit through different times, because it's a very active and a very dynamic the community there during the. Of course, the garbage city is a very interesting case. It's a unique slum, let's say slum or shantown, how we would like to call it. And it's interested for anthropologists, it's interested for photographers. It was take place on a public art project, and was a very famous murales, not to give a visibility to them. And this was including also the participation of the community. And also it's very interesting for the sociologist and for the photographer. This is a very interesting work from Marco Bungarelli, and I picked some interesting photo. It was looking really inside of the life of them, and how it is a very huge impact, and how is the environmental impact also to living with this garbage and the contamination in the street, a very dirty place, by the way, and a very high risk for the health of the community. Well, what we did with the student, that was our approach, design and research approach to reading the informality. First of all, we was focused to design for people, okay, as a designer, as a in love with the form and with the plan, but we try to really highlight the issue of the social aspect and not consider sustainable design, participatory design, sustainable architecture, and self-sufficient maybe solution for them. First of all, we were mapping a comparison, and this was the list of the case study between the Cairo, the local, and the global. And we are working through the reading, the large scale, 20,000 and 10,000 scale. And then we were in a comparison of the border of this informal settlement, and then a comparison between, let's say, a visual impact, such data, and study there. And this is one of the two of the best work, was a comparison between the local and the large scale, and some summary of the work of the study. Then we went through the urban analysis, using the impact of the first video present in the lecture today, and visual perception and mapping. We try not to work with a cognitive map. We prepare the student with all the large map, take a very good consideration about the border and the surrounding area. We were working with the model also towards in progress. And then we give to them a task to work with the keyword and image. This is such result come out from them at the beginning as an impact, an impression after the visit. For them, of course, was the first time to visit the area. We prepared the visit, we've been there with my TA a couple of times to prepare all the routes and the map and try to connect with some local and facilitator of the community. And this is how come out the reflection of the student over the impact with the visual experience there. And then we were working through to the map. And it was very interesting, the interaction also with the community, very friendly, very nice with us. This is the summary of the urban analysis, the environmental aspect, the social aspect, how the community, how is the connection inside of the settlement and behind the border in the district and also with the city, and the economical aspect and the social issue, how they work. This is an amazing section my student developed, how is working, how is interaction and impact with the network of the city. Then we come out through the keyword and to figure out the problem, in the three important aspects: social, environmental, and economical. Was a very active focus group and active section there. And I think so. There is one video, and I think so. I missed one very short video. I don't know where is it. I think so. And this is the summary. How come out the preparation for the master plan and the design proposal. We come out with the several topics and subtopics. And now I will leave the space to my teaching assistant to show you quickly the final result of our studio. I hope it was clear. Thank you so much.
Hi, hello everyone. Okay, that's easy. I'm Ahmed Al Hussein, and this is Muhammad Sharqawi. And now I'll share the screen. Okay. So actually, we're going to show you 3 of the best projects that we have. Actually, the students worked as a group of 3 to 4. So at the beginning, they worked as a master plan for the whole area, and then each student worked as individual in part of it. So we're going to show you these 3 projects. The first one is inside outside, then radiating cores, and the third one is strength gold. So Sharqawi will start by the first one.
During the course of the studio, the main focus of the studio was firstly to create a new identity of the informal area or the informal settlements in order to encourage people to get into the area and to enhance or boost the economic state of the area. The next part was to develop the quality of living and develop the quality of living of the people and the public spaces that are there. And create a flexible zone to deal with different users towards the area itself, regarding the dwellers, the workers, and the visitors of the area. Okay, now we're going to start. We're going to start with the first project. The first project it was called Inside Out. The main concept of the project was to create several axes throughout the area itself of Mantiqat Nasser in order to facilitate and create several access points and connection between the surroundings of the surroundings at the city itself and the area of Mantiqat Nasser in order to create several networks with the city. The first thing is generating, and also it throughout the axes itself. It's kind of generating different activities and different qualities within the axis, leading to an open space at the end in order to encourage people from outside to enter and kind of work with the people of Mantiqat Nasser and the informal settlements. We're going to elaborate the different projects and the different with the students' work. First of all, that's a section showcasing how the students worked within the area, starting with the entrance and the shops as a way to kind of attract people into getting into the Mantiqat Nasser, and then a walk throughout the Mantiqat Nasser or throughout the informal area in order to showcase the process of garbage collection and the process of the garbage sorting. And then it ends with an expansion within on the mountain itself, because the mountain was always a barrier towards the people, or a barrier that discouraged people to get into or to expand. We're going to start with the first project. The first project was called To the Sky. It includes the student who was mainly focusing on creating new typologies of housing through a modular system in order to create a new way of living, or to create a new way of working within the area. The first, as you can see, he's working on the entrance of the area itself and working on the voids and the spaces that can that he thought that he can create the new typology within it. As you can see, he first analyzed the area in order to create a zoning system, or to understand how the area works. And then he applied his concept, which is creating the modular system and the new typology of residential spaces. Here he is saying that the typology or the modular system that he is creating can act as a different activities. It can act as a storage unit, it can act as a communal spaces, vegetation, or even as a residential area or housing for the people of the area itself. As you can see here, he is trying to showcase how the housing units will work. And it ends with a shot that in order to show us how the typology is going to work with the already existing situation. And for the second project, it's called Stacked Up. The student was working on the already existing spaces and how will she develop the area without demolishing, without removing anything, but rather in addition or in order to apply her modular with the already existing areas or spaces. So she is here analyzing the system or the housing system of the area itself. And then here she is trying to show us how will the addition or the modular addition will work throughout the area, and how will it work on the roofs, and how will it work within the open spaces itself. It showcases how the workshops, she added her layer was going to work on the ground floor as workshops for the people who are visiting the informal settlements. How would they sell their stuff, how would they sort the garbages, and how they will work as a within the area itself. And how she is showcasing how the core and the spaces will be applied together within the area. And as you can see, different zoning to showcase how can also the residential can work with the garbage collection system. Not only she's trying to integrate both qualities together in order to give to integrate the living with the work environment. As you can see here, it's a section that showcases how will the design will work on the roofs of the buildings, and also how will it work on the ground floor, and how people will interact with the spaces themselves. The third design, which was it's a very interesting end to the project itself. The student was actually trying to experiment how will this modular system can create new possibilities of expansion within the area itself. So she was trying to act with the mountain as a part of the design process, not rather as a boundary. It can create different qualities and create different approaches of the design itself. So she kind of created a modular or a grid system in order to add her modular system and to create better living situation or better environment for the people that is in Manshiat Nasser or in the informal settlements. Here you can see how she actually created different analysis or different systems on the modular. How can it work? How the stacking up of the model itself can work with the area. Here, how is one of the design or one of the analysis of the modular system, the structure and how people are going to live, and how can actually she add different additions or different qualities of the area. And that's it for the first design proposal. The second design proposal was also very interesting because they were trying different focus or different design proposal for the area itself. Rather than creating an axis, they kind of analyzed the area, and based on their analysis, they chose different urban voids and connected them in order to revitalize the informal settlements or to revitalize the area of Manshiat Nasser. And they were targeting into creating a more livable and social integrative public spaces and create a network throughout connecting these nodes together into creating better life or better quality of life for the people. Each node was targeting a different and a specific character or role within the area or within the design proposal. And it varies from workshop node, economical node, ecological node, and social node. They all work together into creating better living situation for them. The first project was a light tower. The student was trying to experiment how will she create a vertical tower within the area of Manshiyat Nasser that can create a new skyline or a new and a multifunctional vertical complex with a contrast to the reality of the area and create an iconic and expressive quality within the area of Manshiyat Nasser itself that can help in providing also for the surroundings. The main idea of the complex or the node or the tower itself was to have a city within the city, to have different qualities and different activities working within the tower itself and supporting the surroundings of the area. And here you can see how the skyline would change or would be affected by the tower, and the tower can actually support all the surroundings elements around it and creating a different point or attraction point towards the people. You can see also how she worked the different levels of the tower, and that's it. The second project was very interesting because the student tackled the open spaces and the public urban voids of the area itself. She kind of worked from the private realm within the housing itself of the area towards the church. The church was a really iconic part of the Manshiyat Nasser itself. Most of the visitors know Manshiyat Nasser by the church itself. So she wanted to integrate the public space from the private area of the housing towards the church as a public entity in order to give a new perspective for the people. Here you can see she's working with the private space or the private housing area and going with this kind of iconic pavilion within the private area in order to help the people create more activities and kind of an economic state for the area, towards the church as the monastery space, as a communal space, in order to connect people with different backgrounds together. As you can see, that's the sections and the plans and the 3Ds of the area, showcasing how the rooftops can act as a public realm or a communal space to the area, and how she's trying to integrate or to connect the people from the residential to the public space in order to create the realm to integrate people together more and help in the work process. And here, how the communal space will get or integrate towards the monastery or the church, the iconic church itself. And the last but not least, the economic node. The third student was working in order to facilitate or to create better economical hubs for the people in Manshiyat Nasser in order to enhance their economical state and provide them with spaces that they can showcase their work and showcase the elements that they're working with. Throughout the garbage collection, focusing on two parts. First thing, the garbage collection process, because 90% of the people that are there are working on the garbage collection. And how is it integrated with the housing and how is it integrated with the living situation of the people? And secondly, how the ground floor activities will work. So she's showcasing, she's kind of creating a spine throughout the whole area. This spine can connect to the ground floor and connect the activities of the people. And she's showcasing finally how the garbage collection process and the garbage sorting process itself will work within these urban voids and how the people will interact within the activities of the spaces themselves. Here you can see the complex, how the residential will work also with the garbage collection process and the ground floor activities. And here she's showcasing how the complex will work from the inside with the residential and also the garbage collection process. Thank you. Giving the mic to Hussein in order to.
The third project, I'll try to be faster. The third project is actually, it's about three different nodes. They are connected together. The first one is the social node that is at the end of the main axis. And then we have the industrial node, which is a complex building, and then the commercial node. So for the social node, it's actually here at the entrance of Saint Simon Church. It's about creating a public space and a residential space all together, and also it's using the same idea of the rooftops, cubes at the roofs. Then we have the industrial node, which is one complex mega structure complex that include different activities together, mainly the industrial part of the storing and collecting and recycling the garbage, and how it can connected with the residential part. And the last one is the commercial node. So here for the first one, the social node, it works with the existing building, and just how they added on the rooftops the idea of also the same idea of the modularity that the other groups worked on. And here you can see how they worked on the rooftops and how they connected the public space in the ground floor with the different roofs using stairs, bridges, and here connecting existing buildings with new structure, and also using the same modular design. As you can see here in the ground floor, it works mainly reserved for the playgrounds, and also in other spaces for the workshops. In the middle, mainly residential, and on the top is reserved and made for people. It acts as social node for the people. So it's like social in the ground and social in the roof, and in the middle it's a residential. This is the main idea of the project. Second one, extended vitality. This is the mega structure for the industrial node. It's all about one big building that holds everything. And also it extended to the roofs of the surrounding buildings, as you can see here. So as you see here, we have the working area, the gathering area, and housing units all within the same building. And this is the section shows how this building actually located within two existing ones, and how it's still like the skyline has the same continuity. So you can't actually tell what is the new one and what's the existing and old one. The third project, I think this is the only project that didn't add much on the existing, just rather than worked on the same envelope. So they just tried to generating new activities and commercial workshops, social and residential activities within the old envelope of the existing buildings. As you can see here, these old buildings are already existed, and they just try to create different activities. Like here, as you see, it's educational, and also we have industrial. So this is before, it has only one use, and then created different uses between housing, commercial, industrial, and that's it. And this is how they imagine the project that would be. And that's it. Thank you.
Is that all finished, Sylvia?
Yeah. Sorry, they took very serious this presentation. I'm really happy about their work today. And so sorry to take time, but we're talking with Nick to the practical part too. Thank you.
No, that's fantastic. I mean, you can see by the number of students that are still on that there's hardly anyone's dropped out. So that's you know, that's really great credit. I mean, you've given a really massive, you know, taken us there on a whirlwind tour, and fantastic work from the students. I mean, you started first talking about morphology, density, and then I think reminding everyone that it's not just the physical, that, you know, there's actually people there. Talked about the importance of seeing the formal and informal together. And actually, we just saw that in a lot of the student work. And then you drop down to the context of Cairo, expansion along the Nile, talked about typologies and those sort of iconic sort of village areas, the city of the dead, the city of the garbage, and those challenges of services, topography, the importance of the mosque and so forth. And then I think you stress really issues about complexity, but also housing typologies and that relationship to built and unbuilt space. And then you went on obviously to the design approach, and three fantastic examples that you gave. There was some really great work there by the students. And I really thank you for that, because our students here doing the studio, hopefully they'll look at those in a lot more detail and take some of the ideas that you've given. But I think the way that you made the point that Sylvia made about integrating the formal and the formal there. I mean, those sections you gave. I mean, one thing that we know that when we visit Cairo is we see these basic structures, you know, these basic building structures that people then come along and fill in. So, and I can see you tried to replicate that same sort of approach. So really fantastic work there. So we might move to, so thank you, Sylvia, and thank you to the students. So I think what we'll do now is move to some of the questions, and I'm sure there'll be a few questions that'll come in about your work. So we'll go to the Q&A. Are you there, Dilek?
Yes, well.
So we might just start with these couple of questions that are there for you. Can you see these?
Yes, I can read it.
Yeah. Okay. So perhaps you can deal with the first one from Erwin from the University of 20.
Yeah. Yeah. Trying to answer some questions from Erwin Nugraha. Thank you for the wonderful talk, blah, blah, blah. From your perspective, what is the contribution from the process and trends of urbanization in Indonesia to inform or confront the debate around planetary urbanization? Yeah, planetary urbanization it's somehow still rather controversial from some perspective, but it's getting more attention for discussion throughout many literatures on the society in the current stage where it's considered to be the urban age. And in many ways, actually my works as well has some quite direct connection to that, where when we see that planetary urbanization, trying to understand how urbanization or the urban is becoming an element of post-industrial society. And using that perspective, it can be argued that somehow all of us could be anywhere, somehow always connected with any urban realities. And that's the main thesis. And I think there are some three important elements where the arguments can be relevant for, in looking at the mega regional development. First, we are witnessing that how capitalism or even global capitalism in many of their forms attempt to dictate the way the urban transform or the urban develop through time. And then the second one is that looking at the urban, it's more that external relational issues are becoming more important rather than internal or border issues. I think it can also reflect on the micro scale of, let's say, thinking about urban informality at the neighborhood scale. I think this is also interesting one to see how actually any of the urban form at different scales actually increasingly has an external and relational issue with the other elements within the external systems. And the third one, what is also important is to understand that any kind of urbanization phenomena may have an interscale or multi-scale coordination. So what is happening at the very micro scale can have a congruent relation with the urbanization process at the larger scale. And that creates that's create a challenge for including intervention or policy intervention, because there might be different set or different scale of actors has to be invited or has to be dealt with when looking at the urban transformation in any space that we are pay attention to. And then the second question is from Aryani Chandramidi. Should I also answer, Paul?
Yep. Yes, please.
She mentioned about the issue of ecological connectivity and water, food, energy nexus. Could you give some thoughts about providing ecosystem services and water, food, energy for these larger mega urban regions? What opportunities and challenges? I think this is quite comprehensive and well, it can be a long time to answer or even to discuss. But what I can give some illustration. Maybe some are not from very much my own research. I think this is worth further investigation. But let's say looking at the urban form or urban corridor at the Java Island scale, in the recently we experienced some interesting phenomenon. For instance, I think last year or 2 years ago, I think last year, there was a blackout throughout the whole island. So I don't know if you were, probably you're not in Indonesia, but I think at least during my life, during my age, I've never seen such a blackout, just the whole islands and the whole city in Java. And that's quite interesting to me. And it was investigated that it was only a matter of one trunk, one infrastructure. I don't know what the name. It's infrastructure, electrical infrastructure was broken somewhere in central Java. I don't know what was the reason, but that only problem with that trunk or backbone of infrastructure, the whole island was blackout. So that's how to see that some issue of security can play at this scale. Let's say thinking about energy, and I think other kind of issue can also emerge. For instance, looking about the food security. It has long been a lengthy discussion in special planning policy, for instance, how to create balance, or how to make a link, or how to make priorities between the two important policy tension in Java. First is the fact that Java is the most urbanized island in Indonesia, while at the same time, historically, Java is the most fertile island in Indonesia. And how can we come up with the solution to that? Because in many cases, it can be contradictory, and that's really the challenge. Because talking about the scale of industrialization also takes place at these fertile areas or around these fertile zones. Well, it's required a further investigation, but from some features, some suggestion can be considered, or at least it's emerging from several cases, that probably for the case of Java, we need to take away some economic activities that consume a lot of space and consume natural resources. Probably basic manufacturing, maybe it's not really the future of Java, but some ideas more on cultural creative economies, for instance, or how to drive local innovation, or maybe the building of more naturally enhancing economies such as tourism. And even more high-tech economy is also evident in some established or some very much industrialized mega region in different continents. So I think that's would be my response to that.
That's great. Thank you, Dilek. That's great. Okay, Sylvia, there's a couple of questions for you. There's actually one in the chat, so perhaps we'll just deal with that one first, if you can see it. If you can see it there, it says, "What a good presentation from Sylvia and the students. I have a question for Sylvia and the students. I think this is a very interesting idea to make a modular housing in the slum area. My question is, the problem in the slum area is the high density and it is difficult to make high-rise construction with heavy equipment. Have you thought about the management and construction method for this area? Is it possible to think of a construction method that is suitable and common to the context of their society?"
Well, a very tricky question, because the students, most of them, they were going on the direction of the modularity. We don't know exactly why. It was a discussion with with my team, with the TA, because most of them, they become in love. And the result we present to you, some of the best, they are really with this modularity. Well, first of all, of course, the complication of the issue. The area is let's say, self-built without a clear plan in the risky context with this issue, the topography, very important after a couple of events and disaster. But the techniques they were working with the self-built area, let's say, was the bricks, and then they integrated with the concrete, and was a kind of unfinished. Probably the students, they took an inspiration to this unfinished building to increase more the density and to apply this modularity with different technology to integrate together. But of course, we must be very careful, because we cannot overload. We were discussing a lot during the critics. We cannot build over and build over. We have to think about the technical aspect, how to support, how to manage. But let's say it's a kind of unfinished part of the area, and they took this inspiration, let's say, to complete, or to, let's say, have an interpretation of the way they were self-built the area, because now responding as a designer to the way the community is built by themselves and they're going in a certain direction. I don't know if my reply is clear, Paul. I don't know. I focus on the question they give to me, or maybe it must be more and more. And of course, the modularity, it's a very simple way to grow and to create and to give to them the possibility probably to just improve a bit the direction of the develop, and maybe for some of the students were interesting to involve them to complete. Now, what is clear, we are going to have a track on the side through the contemporary design. I mean, no, we are not going to copy. We can have an interpretation of the context, but we have to apply something with the modern technology. I mean, with the modern language of design. This is very important. It was a design studio. Was clear, Paul, or I don't know?
No, very good. No, that's great. I like the thing about the modular, I mean, and the flexibility, the flexibility that.
Yeah, in terms of flexibility, in terms of, let's say, variety of the composition, because the modular can be closed, can be open and close, and enter in the issue of the rhythmic of the composition, etc. On the possibility to build by step, by different steps. No, you had one module now, and then second and the third one. But this has come out from the group that become in love with this issue. I don't know, probably such a reference, no idea. Well, no, there's another question.
Yeah, there's another question in the Q&A. Yeah.
How you apply the implement plans and design in the urban context? What step we should take? I'm right.
There's the one in the Q&A says. In the Q&A, it says, what provision does the design proposal has for the Cairo slum residents in the event they are not able to afford the upgraded housing due to the low income? They appear to lose their means of income generation through garbage collection. What other economic activity does the proposal have for them? Thank you.
I didn't read the question, but because I was in the previous one, I think construction method is in the chat. Sorry, just to understand very well.
It's just in the Q&A one, yeah.
Okay. What provision does the design proposal for the current investment not able to afford the upgrade housing? Well, for some of the students, and also was in the project, in the proposal, we are pushing them to rethink, okay, there is a system, okay, they are living and working together. But especially in one aspect, I was pushing them in terms of the hygienic condition, because we were very clear with the student, we cannot create a new system for them, but maybe as a designer, we can respond to organize better the space, to think about the hygienic condition there, because of course, this is a kind of, I mean, for the new generation, they are continuing this activity because it's a very good income for them. But the condition where they are, the high density, the hygienic condition of the air, it's absolutely necessary from the design. We are able to respond, to reorganize better them. It's not the way to change the way they are living, because this is a very difficult, it's something really radicated there, okay? And it's connected, it's not only a case how they're living, it's the way they are living and they're working together. There is a city there, a system there. But how as a designer, we are able to respond to, let's say, organize better or providing a better solution for the urban quality of the life, and especially in this case regarding the, I don't know, imagine about the smell, about the organic waste, because there are several organizations for this activity there. And imagine under the COVID also, because of course the studio was becoming from atelier modality and then online, and then the COVID arrived. We didn't have the possibility to really drive the studio on the COVID topics, but imagine in the COVID situation, this aspect as a very important new frame we must consider for the future. And for this community, it's a very high risk. It's a very big issue, very big issue. I hope it's fine my reply, or I don't know if I focus exactly on the question.
No, it was great. No, great response. And in some ways, to me, you're sort of throwing caution to that thing about, formalizing the informal. You in some ways you're questioning sort of how we do that, in this context. So I just there might be one more question.
But sorry, Paul, just the issue. I mean, it's not. I mean, our mentality to formalize the informality, and this is come to the method. Ours is very important to read what existing there, to try to understand the community, to try to understand the relation with the city, because the model to bring the formal inside the informal doesn't work. We have to really understand how is the structure there and give a kind of contribution between the needs of them and the capacity as a designer to improve the quality of them. I mean, this is what the aims of the studio, improve the quality, not transfer a model from outside, because this is really a mistake in my point of view.
Yep, no, great answer. And I think on that point we'll finish. I think that's a really good way, to finish off. I think you've responded very, very, very well there. So look, thank you to Dilek, thank you to Sylvia and to our students. Fantastic presentations, different scales, different issues. So I'll pass it back to Sahida.
Yes.
Sahida.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor Derek Hudela, Dr. Sylvia Kofarino, Ahmed El Hozayan, and Muhammad El Sharkawi. It was a very interesting and very insightful presentation. And also thank you very much for Dr. Paul Jones for your conclusion and for your time. We are honored and pleased to have you here. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the day after tomorrow, we will have another lecture with other interesting topics, which will be delivered by Dr. Marcela Del Signor from New York Institute of Technology and Pavo Monconin from University of California, Los Angeles. So please don't miss it. Next page, please. Okay, announcement to all participants. I will remind you that tomorrow will be a tutorial session, so there is no lecture, but you have to finalize your group work.